Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The tension in Genoa City had been building for weeks, a slow boil that no one had quite been able to anticipate, but that culminated in one explosive, unforgettable moment when Lily Winters, poised yet visibly shaken, found herself at the center of a confrontation that would leave everyone in shock and alter the trajectory of her relationship with Kane Ashby forever. Because what started as a heated argument in Kane's penthouse, a conversation that seemed at first to be about minor disagreements, past miscommunications, and unresolved feelings, quickly escalated into a collision of emotions so raw, so powerful, and so unexpected that even the most seasoned residents of Genoa City who happened to hear the news later would struggle to comprehend the magnitude of what had unfolded. It began with Lily attempting to express frustration over Kane's recent decisions, the ways he had been distracted, distant, and at times evasive when it came to matters that were central to their shared life, and as she tried to articulate her fears and disappointment, Kane, equally defensive and yet desperate to hold on to control of a conversation he felt slipping through his fingers, interrupted with sharp words, cutting remarks, and dismissive gestures, all of which inflamed Lily's emotions, reigniting past grievances that had been simmering quietly under the surface, waiting for the right storm to release them into full force. Their voices escalated, the air thick with unspoken accusations, resentments, and heartbreak, until the conversation reached a tipping point. Kane, in a rare moment of anger and frustration, raised his hand, and with emotion that shocked both of them and would become the talk of Genoa City, delivered a sharp slap across Lily's cheek, an act that stunned her into silence for a brief moment, leaving her stunned, betrayed, and almost physically numb, the echo of the impact reverberating through the room as if the walls themselves had felt the force of the moment, while Kane's chest heaved, his own eyes wide with immediate regret, realizing that his impulsive action had crossed a boundary that could never be uncrossed. In that frozen second, the world seemed to hold its breath, both of them staring at each other with a mixture of disbelief, shame, and raw emotion, neither fully knowing how to process the escalation that had just occurred, because while their relationship had seen its fair share of challenges, disagreements, and heartbreak, physical violence had never been part of their dynamic, and the enormity of Kane's misstep hit both of them like a thunderbolt, illuminating the fragility of their connection in a way that could no longer be ignored. Lily, regaining her composure, her cheek stinging from the slap, felt an overwhelming surge of clarity, a sense that she could no longer continue the relationship in the same way, that the trust and safety she had placed in Kane had been irreparably damaged, at least for the moment, and that she needed to assert her boundaries in a manner that left no room for doubt or misunderstanding. Her response, delivered in a voice trembling with both anger and sadness, carried the weight of finality, reverberating across the room with a gravity that shocked Kane and would haunt him in the hours, days, and weeks to come. She said 3 words, simple, devastating, and precise. "We are done." Those 3 words, while seemingly brief, encapsulated an entire universe of disappointment, heartbreak, and the realization that love, no matter how deep, could be compromised by actions that betrayed the foundation of trust, respect, and mutual understanding upon which it had been built. As the words settled into the room, Kane's face went pale, his body tensing as he struggled to grasp the full implications of Lily's declaration, because while he had feared losing her at times due to misunderstandings, disagreements, or emotional distance, he had never anticipated that one impulsive act could so completely fracture the bond they had nurtured over years of struggle, compromise, and shared growth. Lily's gaze remained steady, unwavering, even as tears threatened to spill, because she understood the necessity of her choice to prioritize her own well-being, her sense of self-respect, and the integrity of her emotional boundaries over the desire to salvage a relationship that, in that moment, had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The slap, the 3 words, and the breakup were not simply the culmination of a single argument. They were the apex of a series of tensions, misunderstandings, and emotional undercurrents that had been quietly shaping their interactions, from Kane's occasional evasiveness to Lily's growing frustration at feeling unheard and unacknowledged, all converging in a single, unforgettable, life-altering moment that would leave the residents of Genoa City reeling once the news spread. Immediately following Lily's declaration, the emotional fallout intensified as Kane, stricken with guilt, attempted to explain, apologize, and reconcile in ways that reflected both his love for Lily and his desperate need to repair what he had damaged, But Lily, firmly rooted in her decision, listened with a mixture of empathy and resolute determination, recognizing that while Kane's remorse was genuine, the severity of his action could not be mitigated simply by words, apologies, or promises of future behavior. In her eyes, the slap symbolized a breach of trust and safety, a line that should never have been crossed, and her three-word declaration was both a shield and a boundary, designed to protect her from further emotional harm, while also communicating the seriousness of the situation to Kane in the clearest possible terms. Kane, meanwhile, was left grappling with a cocktail of regret, confusion, and helplessness, realizing that no amount of explanation could undo the physical and emotional impact of his impulsive act, and that moving forward would require not only patience, reflection, and self-awareness on his part but also an acknowledgement that the relationship he had once taken for granted now required rebuilding from the ground up, if rebuilding was even possible. The psychological and emotional consequences were profound. Lily experienced a sense of empowerment mixed with sorrow, recognizing that her decision, though painful, was necessary for her emotional survival, while Kane faced the reality of the immediate and potentially permanent consequences of a moment of lost control, a sobering reminder that love alone is never sufficient to sustain a relationship when actions betray fundamental trust. As the room seemed to close in around them, both trapped in a maelstrom of emotion, the city outside continued unaware of the personal apocalypse unfolding in Kane's penthouse, a microcosm of heartbreak and realization that, while intensely private, would have ripple effects throughout their social circles, friends, family, and professional connections, all of whom would soon be drawn into the narrative of conflict, reconciliation, or permanent estrangement as Genoa City processed yet another dramatic turn in the lives of two of its most iconic residents. The news of Lily's breakup with Kane, coupled with the shocking slap and her definitive 3 words, spread through Genoa City with a velocity that seemed almost supernatural. Friends, family, colleagues, and rivals alike were immediately drawn into the unfolding drama, each person interpreting the events through their own lens of concern, loyalty, or curiosity. Devon Hamilton, close confidant to both Lily and Kane, found himself caught in the middle, attempting to mediate, support, and console while maintaining a neutral stance, but even his composure was tested as he navigated the competing narratives, questions, and gossip that quickly began circulating throughout social and professional circles. Other residents, from Neil Winters to Phyllis Summers, were drawn into the conversation, weighing in with opinions that reflected not only their personal histories with the couple, but also their broader understanding of interpersonal dynamics, boundaries, and the complexities of love under pressure. Some expressed sympathy for Lily, recognizing her need to assert herself and protect her emotional well-being, while others quietly speculated about the long-term consequences for Kane, questioning whether his impulsive action represented a fundamental flaw in his character or a momentary lapse in judgment from which redemption might be possible. Meanwhile, the social media chatter, both inside Genoa City and across fan forums, exploded, with residents and viewers alike debating the morality, ethics, and emotional intelligence of the events, turning a private confrontation into a public spectacle, intensifying the pressure on both Lily and Kane, and magnifying the emotional stakes for everyone involved. Lily, understanding the scrutiny she would face, fortified herself against external judgment while simultaneously processing her own complex feelings, a mixture of grief, relief, clarity, and lingering affection that created a turbulent internal landscape. She reviewed past incidents, interactions, and conversations, searching for patterns that explained Kane's behavior, moments that might have predicted the culmination into violence, and signs that might indicate whether forgiveness, reconciliation, or permanent separation was truly the best path forward. Each memory was a thread in a tapestry of love, conflict, and unmet expectations, and as she navigated the emotional labyrinth, Lily realized that her decision to break up was not impulsive but deeply considered, grounded in the principles of self-respect, safety, and personal growth. Kane, on the other hand, was forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that intentions do not negate impact, that love without accountability is insufficient, and that moments of physical aggression, however brief or unintentional, leave indelible marks on trust and emotional security. The slap, seemingly fleeting, now represented a threshold beyond which the relationship could no longer safely operate, an event that redefined the boundaries, responsibilities, and expectations of both partners in a visceral and permanent way. As the shock of Lily's decision reverberated throughout Genoa City, Cain was left grappling not only with immediate guilt but with the haunting awareness that the very foundation of his relationship had been shattered in seconds, leaving him to navigate a landscape fraught with emotional debris, shattered trust, and the looming possibility that, despite years of shared history, love and companionship, some actions cannot be undone, and some words, even three, carry the power to echo through lives in ways that demand reckoning. The slap, though momentary, became a symbol, a turning point, a fulcrum upon which the balance of their shared future teetered dangerously, and Cain, typically confident, decisive and unflappable, felt an unfamiliar, almost paralyzing weight of vulnerability settle across his chest, a sensation amplified by the silence that followed Lily's declaration, a silence that was thick with judgment, expectation, and the raw, almost sacred energy of a life-altering confrontation that would leave lasting scars. Lily, meanwhile, retreated inward, feeling the paradoxical interplay of relief, sadness, and empowerment as she processed the confrontation, understanding that while breaking up with Cain was devastating, it was simultaneously a reclaiming of autonomy, an assertion of personal boundaries that defined her as a woman, a professional, and a partner unwilling to compromise her dignity for the comfort of familiarity or the convenience of love, and in that realization, Lily experienced a complex cocktail of emotions, pride in her decisiveness, sorrow for the love lost, fear of the unknown, and anticipation of the personal growth that would inevitably follow such a moment of profound, life-altering choice. Around them, Genoa City's social and professional circles were already reacting. Friends, family, and colleagues debated motives, consequences, and potential resolutions with varying degrees of empathy and judgment, creating a maelstrom of gossip, speculation, and moral posturing that threatened to overwhelm both Lily and Cain with the weight of public scrutiny, because in a city defined by visibility, influence, and interconnected histories, private matters rarely remained private for long, and this explosive moment, now widely known, had the potential to redefine social allegiances, professional collaborations, and familial expectations for months, if not years, to come. Cain, grappling with the immediate aftermath, oscillated between deep remorse and strategic calculation, trying to discern whether there was a path to redemption that would satisfy both his own conscience and the inescapable standards of emotional accountability imposed by Lily, whose response, measured yet firm, made it clear that no apology alone could repair the fracture created by his impulsive act. He considered every past decision, every compromise, every instance of miscommunication, realizing that the relationship he had relied on as a source of stability, joy, and identity had now become a site of trauma, reflection, and moral reckoning, demanding a level of introspection and personal growth that he had never before needed to undertake with such urgency or intensity. Lily, as she navigated the city streets later that evening, felt the complex interplay of grief, relief, clarity, and fear as she moved through spaces that once held comfort, laughter, and intimacy, now haunted by the specter of what had been lost and what would never be the same again. Every familiar landmark, from Crimson Lights to the Winters estate, felt charged with the memory of conversations, shared victories, and moments of tenderness, now reframed by the knowledge that her emotional boundaries had been violated, and that reclaiming her autonomy required not only the courage to walk away, but the wisdom to anticipate the emotional consequences that would inevitably follow. The interplay of personal and social consequences was immediate. Devon, Neil, and other close friends reached out, balancing support with concern, navigating the delicate terrain of offering comfort without overstepping, while colleagues and professional allies observed from the periphery, weighing loyalty, strategy, and optics in a city where reputation was both currency and weapon, and where the fallout of personal decisions could ripple unpredictably through boardrooms, social gatherings, and community influence. In her solitude, Lily reflected on the trajectory that had brought them to this point. The shared moments of joy, the compromises made, the moments of misunderstanding and miscommunication, and the subtle, accumulating pressures of life that had strained the relationship over time. She considered Cain's strengths, his unwavering commitment in many respects, and his occasional lapses in judgment that had created cracks in their trust, and she realized that love, while powerful, could not serve as a shield against actions that fundamentally violated safety, respect, and the boundaries she had established as non-negotiable. Cain, conversely, was left in a state of profound introspection, recognizing that while love and intent were meaningful, they could not undo the tangible impact of his behavior. and that the path to any potential reconciliation would require humility, reflection, and perhaps a transformation in how he understood accountability, boundaries, and the fragility of trust, a transformation that might not be guaranteed to produce the desired reconciliation, but was nonetheless essential to his personal growth and the preservation of his own integrity. The interplay of emotional and social dynamics extended beyond the immediate couple. The Winters family, from Neil to family friends, had their own reactions shaped by years of shared history, loyalty, and protective instincts, creating an environment in which every word, action, and response was scrutinized for alignment with family values, ethical standards, and the unwritten codes of support and intervention that governed their interactions in a city defined by connection, visibility, and legacy. Meanwhile, Genoa city itself, as if alive to the drama unfolding in its midst, seemed to respond. News traveled swiftly through the social grapevine, affecting interactions at the Grand Phoenix, in offices, at charitable events, and in the private spaces of friends and rivals alike, where gossip, speculation, and emotional investment intertwined with professional strategy and personal judgment to create a charged atmosphere in which both Lily and Kane would have to navigate not only the immediate consequences of their confrontation, but also the long-term ramifications for their social standing, emotional reputations, and the intricate web of relationships that constituted the fabric of their lives in Genoa City. Social media, forums, and fan commentary amplified the emotional weight of the confrontation, as viewers and residents alike dissected every nuance, gesture, and word, debating morality, agency, and the implications of physical aggression in relationships, and positioning Lily as both a figure of empowerment and a woman facing the fallout of a deeply challenging personal choice, while Kane's actions were analyzed, critiqued, and contextualized within the broader narrative of his character arc, reputation, and pattern of decision-making, highlighting the complex interplay between personal action, public perception, and long-term relational consequences that would dominate the city's consciousness in the weeks and months to come. Lily's next steps were deliberate, calculated, and emotionally grounded. She reached out to close confidants to process her experience, set boundaries with Kane that reflected both her commitment to personal integrity and her understanding of emotional consequences, and began contemplating the future in ways that reflected a newfound awareness of self-worth, safety, and relational dynamics, recognizing that while the separation was painful, it also offered an opportunity for reflection, growth, and the possibility of reconstructing her life on terms that aligned with her values, principles, and emotional health. She considered potential professional implications, the support she would need from friends and family, and the strategies for navigating social spaces in which Kane remained present, preparing for the reality that their lives would continue to intersect in the city in which both were deeply entrenched. The moment Lily uttered her 3 devastating words, Kane felt the weight of finality crash down on him like a tidal wave, each syllable echoing through the apartment and embedding itself deep in his chest, leaving him reeling from shock, guilt, and disbelief, because while he had expected anger, argument, and maybe even tears, he had never anticipated the cold, decisive certainty in Lily's tone that signaled the absolute end of their romantic chapter, a realization that immediately ignited a whirlwind of self-reflection, regret, and a gnawing fear that he may have irrevocably lost the woman he loved most. Lily, meanwhile, felt a strange mixture of sorrow and liberation coursing through her, the sting of Kane's slap still radiating across her cheek, a physical reminder of betrayal and the violation of trust, but alongside it, a growing sense of empowerment, as if each heartbeat were whispering that she had done the right thing by asserting her boundaries, refusing to let fear, habit, or misplaced loyalty dictate her choices, and standing her ground allowed her to reclaim agency over a life and a heart that she refused to surrender to impulsive anger or careless actions. Kane's initial instinct was to reach out, to try to soothe, explain, and apologize, but the gravity of the slap and the resoluteness of Lily's declaration forced him into a moment of helpless pause, his hands frozen in midair, his mind racing through every conversation, every argument, every lapse in judgment, desperately seeking a path that might reverse the damage, but realizing in a gut-wrenching instant that some lines, once crossed, could never truly be uncrossed. His usual charm, wit, and persuasive skills failed him, because he was no longer negotiating mere disagreement. He was facing the profound consequences of violating trust, of crossing a boundary that Lily had never signaled could be tolerated, and of committing an act that now demanded both introspection and accountability beyond words. The apartment itself seemed to echo the tension. The silence that followed Lily's 3 words was thick with emotion, almost tangible, pressing against their chests and filling the space with a mix of heartbreak, regret, and raw, unspoken truths, as if the walls themselves were mourning the fracture of what had once been a loving and secure relationship. Every item in the room, from the photos of shared memories to the small details of a life built together, became symbols of a past now impossibly intertwined with pain, each object reminding them both of what they had lost in a matter of moments, a stark contrast to the life they had imagined, planned for, and fought for together.